you mentioned contraception, you mentioned mifepristone, and that is a perfect transition to some of the decisions from the Supreme Court that we have seen this term. You, Skye, have served as legal counsel on some of these cases. Let's start with the most recent one. SCOTUS issued an opinion on the Idaho abortion ban yesterday, or kind of a partial opinion if you listen to Justice Jackson and her dissent. But break down for us, what did the Supreme Court decide when it comes to emergency abortions in Idaho?
Well, the Supreme Court yesterday decided to lift a stay that it itself put in place that prevented women in Idaho from being able to receive federally protected emergency care under a law that is known, that it's abbreviated INTALA, but it is a federal law that enables all people, including pregnant people, to obtain emergency care when they need it. And there have been extreme attacks, such as the ban in Idaho that bans abortion in instances where people need an abortion in an emergency situation at an emergency room to protect their health. So the Supreme Court yesterday, the result of its order is that women in Idaho will be able to receive that federally protected emergency care. However, what the Supreme Court did not do, and what it should have done, is to unequivocally state that state abortion bans like Idaho's that prevent people from seeking emergency care in an emergency abortion care are unlawful. And because the Supreme Court did not unequivocally state that, and it sort of kicked the can down the road, it essentially dismissed the petition that was before it, that it itself granted, saying that they made a mistake, but now has left open the possibility that either with respect to the Idaho case or with respect to a case in Texas or in other states, that that those cases would come back up to the court, and that the court might shut the door on this federally protected emergency care. And so it is a very disappointing decision. It is good that women in Idaho will be able to obtain some level of emergency care. Of course, the only reason that they were not able to obtain that is because the Supreme Court stayed a lower court's order that was enabling them that had found that the Idaho ban was unlawful because of these issues. So the Supreme Court sought to correct that, I guess, in the near term, but is really avoiding the broader issue. And what this means is that reproductive rights are still being threatened throughout the country. This does not provide any certainty for people in other states like Texas that are continuing to be deprived of emergency care.
So there are a lot of legal mechanisms that you referenced in your answer right there. But for folks who want to know if they can get care in Idaho, the takeaway is that if they are pregnant and they are experiencing a medical emergency that would require an abortion, as of yesterday, the court is allowing them to receive that. But future challenges to Idaho law could undo what the court just did.
Yeah, so if it sounds confusing, that's because what the court has been doing on abortion is confusing. And that's a purpose of a lot of this extreme behavior, is to confuse people. So I'll break it down really simply. In Idaho, the abortion ban that prevents people from receiving care in the ER to protect their health, if that care requires an abortion. Right now, there is a federal court order from a lower federal court that is in effect, that says that part of the ban is unlawful and that women can obtain that care. That's what the Supreme Court essentially allowed to go into effect yesterday, after it had stopped that protection for people for a period of 6 months. The problem with what the Supreme Court did yesterday is that it did not say unequivocally that the Idaho ban was in fact unlawful. It did not address this issue with respect to other states, and it essentially avoided those issues, which, as Justice Jackson pointed out in her dissent, means that women across the country continue to, and healthcare providers across the country continue to exist in a state of uncertainty, a state of chaos. And of course, we know from the stories in Texas and the accounts in Florida and other places that women are continuing to be deprived of emergency care. Yesterday, the court's order did not change that at all.